We'll start. Hi, everyone. We'll start in about 2 minutes. I'm just waiting for the attendees to go up. And then I have a few announcements. Couple more minutes. All right, we'll start. Good morning, everyone. So I have a few announcements before we start. I know the picnic was canceled for today, and now it's for tomorrow. So what we'll do is I'll send a note out to all the internships. The internship will then start on Wednesday. So I will send a note after our meeting is over with, letting everyone know that you are to start your internship this Wednesday, due to the picnic being canceled. That way everyone can attend. If anyone has any questions about that, don't message me right now through the chat, but just email me. And also Mr. Rothman will say a few words at the end of the webinar about that. The other announcement is really about your journals and timesheets. This is really important. On Thursdays, you will have a link from the portal that you'll need to get your journal done. You have until Saturday to do that. Basically what it is, as you all know, we've explained in the interviews, it's a journal question. We'll ask you how your week was. Every week has a different question. And more importantly, you have to answer that, but you have to put your hours in. That's how we know to give you credit. That time, the timesheet piece actually goes to your internship and they approve it on Sunday night, Monday morning. So it's really, really important that you check your email and get your journal and timesheets done every week. Okay. That being said, today we have two speakers. We have Mr. Ben Carpenter. He wrote the book, The Bigs, which you all should have and picked up when you turned in your contract. And then we have Miss Kathleen Krause, who's the teen librarian at New Canaan Library, and she will talk about LinkedIn. So to get things started, first I'm going to play a video about Ben Carpenter's book. So I'm just going to share my screen and we're going to play a video, and then Ben will say a few words.
Spring day, it's a beautiful life. Don't let them get you down this time. Well, the best days, we ain't seen them yet. This ain't even as good as it's gonna get. Ain't even as good.
It's crazy that you're here watching a video about a book I wrote, because a few years ago, it had never occurred to me to write any book. But then, my daughter graduated from college. During her years as a student, Avery spent little time thinking about her future. So at graduation, she received her diploma in English and had no idea what to do with it. She moved back home for the next 8 months, and with no job in sight, my wife Lee and I began to worry. But then Avery did something very smart. She sat down and thought about what she had always enjoyed doing, and more importantly, what she was good at. As a young girl, Avery had always loved acting, but when she discovered that 85% of professional actors and actresses were unemployed, she didn't think that sounded like much fun. But what Avery was always great at was writing, and she had an idea that she could combine her love of acting with her talent for writing for a career, or at least a job, in television production. After a focused search, Avery got a great job offer to be the assistant to the co-executive producer of Katie Couric's daytime talk show on ABC. The producer called Avery personally and told Avery she needed to be at work on Monday morning because the show was going on the air for the first time in a few weeks. The next day, Avery sent my wife Lee and me an email. "Is this okay to send?" asking her new boss if Avery could start work a week later because, now that she had a job, Avery wanted to go apartment hunting. When I read that email, I totally freaked out. I wasn't mad at Avery. I was scared for her because I realized she had no idea what a real-world job, the big leagues, would demand of her. I immediately responded, "Do not send, more to follow," and began furiously typing on my phone 22 bullet points of everything Avery needed to know to survive and thrive in the work world. Then I kept writing, and the result was the book, The Bigs.
Avery did start work that first Monday, and one of the bullet points led to Avery being promoted quickly, from her entry-level job as an assistant to a great position on one of the best production teams. Since this is a collection of lessons from Ben's professional successes and failures, you need a little background to understand them.
What I remember most from my childhood was moving every 2 years, because my father kept losing his job. He was very intelligent and hardworking, but my father made the mistake of choosing the wrong career. Instead of playing to his strengths in research and numbers, he wanted to manage people. But because my father had little ability to connect with people emotionally, the result was an incredibly painful 30-year working career that ultimately destroyed his confidence. But my father wasn't the only one struggling. Always being the new kid wasn't easy. Once, as a 9th grader, a group of seniors grabbed me in the hallway, carried me outside, and hung me from the school flagpole by my underwear, just as school let out. But mostly, I made life difficult for myself. As a junior, I got kicked off varsity ice hockey for mooning another team's fans. 2 months later, I was the starting center fielder for varsity baseball and got kicked off that team when coach yelled at me to hustle out to my position. And because I was a 17-year-old with a bad attitude, I yelled back at him. Despite my stupidity, I did graduate and was accepted to a small school in Maine. College also got off to a rough start because freshman year, my parents got divorced. But then things got better, much better, because during my sophomore year in college, I met Lee. She was a freshman and had been on campus for all of 2 days, and I saw her across the room at a party. That year, Lee and I had a wonderful college romance. But then Lee decided she wanted a more urban school. She never came back to Maine, and we lost touch. I stayed at the same college and thought about becoming a lawyer because I was a government major. But the only way I could afford law school was to first make some money. So I went to my college's career service office for advice. They suggested I try to get a job as a banker because I could learn about business and maybe save some cash. After graduation, I moved to New York and was hired by Bankers Trust Company to work in their Empire State Building branch. My job was to lend money to the fashion industry in that area of Manhattan. I had been in New York for 4 months when my best friend from college was coming to visit me. He stuck his hand in the elevator of my apartment building, and when it opened, guess who was inside? Lee. A minute later, I'm knocking on Lee's door, and my old college sweetheart became my new girlfriend. And 4 years later, more.
This ain't even as good as it's gonna get.
3 Bigs lessons from hopes and dreams. The surest path to professional success is to do what you're good at.
My father didn't do that, and his career was an unending source of unhappiness. Avery did figure out what she had talent for and had a great run at the Katie Couric show, and since then is one of the 2 lead writers for a popular free email newsletter called The Skim. The key is to not blindly follow your passion, but rather develop a passion for something you have a talent for. In The Bigs, there's a chapter that will help you figure out what jobs you might have a talent for and an interest in.
Another important aspect of exploring careers is to consider what is most important to you and why you care about it.
Growing up, money was always a huge concern because my father kept losing his job, and this made me want to achieve financial security for my family. Your upbringing and experiences are likely to greatly influence your professional life. The more you understand about who you are, the more likely you are to make choices that lead to a successful and fun career.
The bullet point that was most important to Avery to being promoted quickly was arrive at work earlier and stay later than your boss.
Part of Avery's job as an assistant was to get to work by 7 a.m. to look at the overnight wire services for news that might be important to the Katie Couric show. The rest of her office and her boss arrived at 9 a.m. The catch was, while everyone else left around 6 p.m., Avery's boss stayed until 9 p.m. Without being asked, Avery followed the bullet point advice and worked every day from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. And within 2 months, her boss was telling everyone in the office that she had the best assistant ever. A few months after that, Avery got her much earlier than expected promotion. It's impossible to know which of the big bullet points will be most important in your internship or job. But if you follow my advice to Avery, I promise you will greatly increase your chances for a successful career.
But before Avery could have a successful career, she first had to get a job. How did she do that? By talking to people.
Once Avery decided to try to get a job in television production, she began asking everyone she knew if they knew anyone in that field. This is called networking. She first spoke to her family and friends, then her current and former teachers, counselors, and coaches, and fellow students and alumni from her high school and college. Finally, one person said to Avery, "I know someone who knows someone at the Katie Couric show." That person introduced Avery to her friend, and ultimately Avery got an interview that landed her first job. I know it's uncomfortable asking people for help, but this is something you must do. The key to getting great internships and jobs is all about figuring out what you want and then talking to people about it.
This ain't even as good as it's gonna get.
Many students dream about starting a business, and Ben took the plunge just a few months after he graduated from college.
I was living in New York, working at Bankers Trust, and playing softball for a popular bar. One evening, after a game, I went back to the bar and had an idea. I could do this. I could get all these people to come to my bar. The only problem was I didn't own a bar and I didn't have much money. But I did have a good idea. And in business, that's the most important thing. So the next day, after I got home from work at the bank, I went out searching for a bar that needed more customers. The first place I saw that looked promising was a one-story building at the corner of 89th and 1st Avenue, the Tumble Inn. From the outside, it was easily the most beat-up and run-down bar I'd ever seen in New York. And it didn't get any better when I walked inside. Going back over the next few weeks, I found out that the bartender was also the owner. Most importantly, I discovered that the bar had over 7 years left on its lease. Finally, I got up my courage and told Margie that I wanted to be her partner. I explained that while I couldn't pay her anything for my share of the business, I thought I could bring in some customers. I told her the deal would work like this. First, we'd pay all the bills of the bar. Second, Margie would be paid a salary that was more than she was currently making. Third, we'd split what was left. The first thing I did was throw out the tables and chairs, but kept the pool table. Then, with the small amount of money I had saved, I bought stereo equipment for a DJ, a big TV for the ball games, and a huge red neon sign. Then I hand-wrote flyers, went to a copy machine, put them under the doors of the apartment buildings in the neighborhood, and my softball team came over to the Tumble Inn. This mix of ingredients was like rocket fuel. The bar took off, and seemingly nothing could stop us. But the Tumble Inn was on the edge of a tough, old-school New York neighborhood, and the local tough guys decided they wanted in on the fun. Suddenly, my wildly successful bar became like a Wild West saloon, with young professionals and tough guys breaking beer bottles and pool cues over each other's heads. More than once, I went to work at Bankers Trust with a black eye from trying to stop the fighting. Things went from bad to worse, and I hired a huge bouncer to restore order. But after his first night, he told me, no job and no amount of free beer is worth getting killed for. I also didn't want anyone to get killed, and I was seriously considering shutting down the Tumble Inn. But then Lee had an idea. She told me, raise the price of beer. The next day, the price of tumbling beer jumped 30%. And just as Lee predicted, the tough guys decided our beer was now too expensive, and they left to fight somewhere else. And for the next 7 years, the Tumble Inn was one of the places to be for young professionals in New York.
5 big lessons from starting a business. Good ideas are precious and rare.
Before that first night at Murphy's, I had never thought of owning any bar. When you have a good idea for a new business, wrap your arms around it, find out if it's an actionable idea, and if it is, you have to have the confidence to do something about it.
You don't need money.
Tumble Inn was unusual because I got a half share in the bar for the price of stereo equipment and a TV. But understand that there is always money available for new businesses if you're able to convince family, friends, or professional investors that you have a good idea.
Know your customers.
When starting a business, the key question is, will people want to buy what you're trying to sell? But if you are the type of person you're hoping to attract as a customer, as I was for the Tumble Inn, that question becomes much easier to answer.
Keep your expenses low.
Because I knew my customers wouldn't care that the Tumble Inn was a dive, I spent no money fixing it up. Keeping expenses low allowed the Tumble Inn to make money even when the tough guys drove away many of our customers. And when those customers returned, it allowed the bar to become highly profitable.
Be creative.
Hiring a bouncer was a typical response to customers fighting in a bar, but it was Lee's unconventional idea to raise prices that saved the business.
In exploring careers, you need to know what you want in a job.
From owning the Tumble Inn, I came to understand that I loved a fast-paced work environment, and going to law school no longer sounded like fun. I also got bored with my job at the Empire State Building. So, instead of law school or lending money, I got a job on Wall Street as a bond salesman. Now this job was fast-paced, and I was a salesman in New York at 2 big banks before getting a similar job with a small bond trading firm in Greenwich, Connecticut called Greenwich Capital. I had finally found a place for my day job that I enjoyed as much as the Tumble Inn, which, sadly, because our lease was up, was about to be torn down in favor of yet another high-rise apartment building. Anyway, one day, after I'd been at Greenwich for 2 years, the founder of the firm, Ted Netzger, asked me to switch jobs and move from sales into trading. When Ted told me this, I was so excited because I had always wanted to be a trader, and I was certain I would be a great one. On the spot, I enthusiastically accepted the offer, and over the next 2 years, proved myself to be one of the all-time worst traders in the history of Wall Street. This doesn't mean I lost the most money in the history of Wall Street, because I was a junior trader with junior trading limits, but I did display an uncanny ability to lose money consistently. I realized that while I had always wanted to be a trader, what I wanted even more was to be a success. And the way to do that, for me, was in sales.
Going back to something Ben was good at allowed him to lead by example and ultimately become a CEO. And during the 20 years he was there, Greenwich Capital became one of the most successful and respected firms on Wall Street. 3 big lessons about exploring careers. Too many students give too little thought to choosing the right career. The Bigs explains 4 ways to choose a career through discussions with experienced professionals, personality tests, trial and error, and looking in the mirror. No matter how much advice you receive, this is a decision that you must take full ownership of. It takes time to find the right spot.
I first thought I wanted to be a lawyer, then a banker, then a trader, before finally realizing that sales and management was where I belonged. Statistically, it's likely you'll have more than 10 different jobs during your career, which is why you need to learn how to choose, get, and do a great job. Also, it's a lot easier to win a race if you get out of the starting blocks quickly.
You can turn failure into success.
One of the reasons why Ted ultimately promoted me to be a CEO, despite my failure as a trader, was that I never hung my head and I never stopped helping my coworkers. In the workplace, if you keep a positive attitude and stay focused when times are tough, your coworkers and bosses will notice.
Now that you've watched the Bigs video, you know Ben hasn't always made the best decisions. and he hasn't always been successful. But he has learned from his mistakes, and he's never stopped trying. When you read the bigs, you'll see that there is much more we didn't have time to cover in this video. A critical part of the bigs we haven't discussed is the chapter on happiness.
Maximizing happiness is always hugely important in your career because happy people are like a magnet. People want to work with and for them. And unhappy people are like a repellent.
Of even more immediate importance is the chapter Next Steps, which shows you how to get started in the big leagues in a big way.
The good news is that taking these steps is not easy. Why is that good news? Because it means you're competing against far fewer people than if everyone showed courage and creativity. The courage of one place I've worked closely with stands out. This is St. Benedict's Preparatory School in Newark, New Jersey. One of St. Benedict's senior administrators, Parad Lowther, volunteered to manage the BIGS program at the school.
To me, education and the BIGS are about the same thing, opportunity. As a young man growing up in Newark, I didn't grow up with many resources. Fortunately, I found St. Benedict's Prep. I love this place. I was able to go to college and get a degree in political science. And just like Avery, I didn't know what to do with it. I was lucky because Father Ed asked me to come back here. But some of my classmates from St. Benedict's and college have had a very tough time. The bullet point most important to me is, if I were my boss, am I doing everything the way I would want it to be done? At St. Benedict's Prep, Father Ed gives us great freedom to do our job. However, he expects nothing but the best. I now ask myself Ben's question at least once a day. What I feel best about is knowing that last year's seniors left with the understanding of how to choose, get, and do a great job. And I can't wait to teach the bigs to this year's seniors.
So when my dad sent me 22 bullet points of what to do in my career, I at first thought he was crazy. But after I actually read them, I was incredibly grateful. They gave me a roadmap for how to think about my career and how to get ahead. I'm now helping to develop the Skim app, which is really exciting, and I'm learning something new and different every day.
As I was writing the 22 bullet points for Avery, it never occurred to me that I'd cover all these topics. But it quickly became clear that these were the things Avery needed to know, these were the things I wanted her younger sisters to know, and finally, I realized these were the things I wish I had understood better when I was a student. Good luck and go get 'em.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have Mr. Carpenter speak. Let me just unmute you. I muted you, Ben. You can unmute yourself.
Yep, how's that?
Perfect. There we go. All right, everyone, this is Mr. Ben Carpenter.
Hi, everyone. So normally at this point, I'd get more into the details about how to choose, get, and do a great job, but I'm not going to do that today. Instead, I want to talk to you about college because I know for almost all of you, it is right around the corner. And I know that most of you, as I was, are focused on how to have fun in college, and that's great. I know there's a smaller group of you that is focused on getting good grades, but I also know that very few of you as freshmen in a few months are going to be focused in on how to achieve your post-college hopes and dreams. And the problem with postponing that process, because it is a process, is that for the most competitive jobs, there are a select group of students at every college that get started on this early. And if you're like most students and you wait until junior or senior year to start thinking about what the next steps are, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. And that's not something that you want to have happen. And so here's what I think you need to do if you want to get off to a fast start, which again is important if you want to do any of the more competitive industries. And the first thing to do is in the first couple months of college is to get to the career services office. And you want to talk to a counselor there. And if you don't know what you want to do for a career, explain the things that you think you're good at, the things that you might want to do. Or if you're like a lot of kids and you think you know what it is that you want to do, then explain that. And one of the things that you ought to do at this first meeting is ask that counselor about what sort of internships there are in the field or fields that you might be interested in for this coming summer, for the freshman summer. And likely at most career service offices, they'll say, you know what, we really don't have freshman internships. If you want to get one of those, you really have to network on your own with friends and family and that sort of thing. But don't just leave it at that. The next question ought to be, well, for sophomores, what sort of internships are there for them? And likely they'll say, well, there are X, Y, and Z sophomore internships available. And ask the question, when are those companies or organizations coming on campus? And well, they're coming in December, January, February, whenever it is, and say, well, that's great. I would love a chance to introduce myself to these companies or organizations, and just so they know who I am and sort of set the table for next year. And if you do that and you have those meetings, you will be in a much stronger position to get those internships than some other student. And importantly, you will impress upon the career services professionals at your school that you're a kid who's focused on the future. And career services is no different than teachers or coaches. Teachers want to teach students that are interested in their subject and are excited about it. Coaches want to coach kids that are interested in the sport and the team. Well, career services is interested in helping kids that are focused on the next steps, because everybody wants to deal with kids that are excited about what they're all about. And so those are a couple things you can do right off the bat to get yourself in position to succeed. Another aspect of resources at college that you can utilize is the other students. And this has to do with, once you understand what career that you might want to go into, understand that there will be students at that school who likely have already had junior year internships in the field and already have job offers in the field. They know where they're going to be going, and they're going to be going and working at the companies or organizations that you want to work at. Well, find out who these kids are. You can do that generally through career services or through networking and around campus. Send them an email. I talk about it in the bigs. I show you examples of it. Send them an email and basically ask if you can buy them a cup of coffee in the student union. Sit down and talk about their career. How did they get the internship? Why did they choose that career? And finally, at some point, maybe in that conversation, maybe at a future conversation, stay in touch with these people after they've started and say, I'd love to get introduced to this company or to your boss or whatever. So that's also, very important. Another resource at the schools is the teachers and coaches there. The coaches, I know from experience, they know, a lot of those coaches, particularly the best ones, stay in touch with their students. They know where they work. And if if they're in your industry, which there's a decent chance they will be, some of them, they can introduce you to them. Same thing with professors. So, there are a lot of resources at schools that can be utilized without any travel, with really out any expense. And the other good thing is very few students take advantage of these. So it's there for you. The last thing I'll say, the advantage you have is that you got that book, The Bigs. It tells you how to choose, get, and do a great job in, I don't belabor it, but in, reasonable detail. You will understand those issues better than most professionals in the industries that you will be joining if you actually read the book and do what the book says. So, I guess in summary, I know that not all students or kids care about academics. I know that not all students or kids care about sports or whatever other specific activity, but I have found that almost everyone wants to be successful in their chosen career. And that's what the Bigs can explain to you. So I'm happy to take any questions, or we can just move along. But Heather, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you students.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was extremely helpful. If anyone has any questions, now is the time to do so in the chat. If not, we'll move on to Miss Kathleen Kraus. Okay. I don't see any questions coming through. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Carpenter. Take care.
You bet, Heather. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I'd like to introduce Miss Kathleen Kraus. She is the Teen Services Librarian at New Canaan Library. She is going to speak to you today about LinkedIn. The goal for today is to create your LinkedIn account with the content. Being that we all have time now, there's no picnic today. What we would like you to do is actually then link in with your mentor and your teachers. So I'm going to introduce Miss Kathleen Kraus, and Kathleen, you could take it from here. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, so I'm the Teen Services Librarian at the library, so you may have seen me there, and I will be seeing some of you as you begin your internships there this week. So I just want to go over kind of an introduction to LinkedIn, and so let me bring my slides up on the screen. But these are just things you're going to want to keep in mind as you get started with it. And since you're starting so early, it's really going to be a process of filling it in as you get different experience. So this is just kind of what to think about as you start to use it. All right, so the first question obviously is, why use LinkedIn? What kind of benefit is there to you? What reasons would you want to have a LinkedIn account? And so one way to think of it is like a resume and a cover letter put together. But something that can also convey your personality and your professional experience. So, if there's something that you feel you can't convey purely on a resume, purely on a cover letter, this is kind of this third way of selling yourself as a candidate, of putting yourself out there in the professional world. And so, yeah, so showing something about who you are, but also being able to capture all of your experience that's relevant. So one reason that you might want to join is because there are 188 million plus users in the United States alone, and more than 830 million members worldwide. So it is definitely a huge force in the working world right now. And it's probably very likely that whichever company you're applying to, places you're interested in, they all have LinkedIn presence and look for accounts on LinkedIn for their candidates. So as we mentioned, by the numbers, 830 million members, 58 million companies listed, 120 schools listed, 120K schools listed, and then 39,000 skills listed. So just everyone is basically on LinkedIn. And as you get to your colleges, you're going to want to connect with your schools. And this is going to be basically a networking opportunity as you get as part of your school's network on LinkedIn, you're also being connected in a sense to all the alumni, all the people who are currently at the school with you. So it's creating a huge network right off the bat. So 5 things that it lets you do, which are pretty important things that you'd want to keep in mind for why it might be appealing is, first of all, it establishes an online presence. So this is maybe not the most glamorous kind of social network to join, but it is a great place to point people to if you're meeting them at some kind of networking opportunity, or you're looking into kind of showing off a professional profile. So this is a way that people can find you online and find out kind of what you're about. It's a great supplement to your resume because it lets you attach, for example, like presentations, things that you've made that you wouldn't be able to have as just part of your resume. You can also research prospective employers. So as much as they will be looking at you, you can also look at them, kind of see what they're putting out there on LinkedIn, what people who work for those companies, what their resumes look like on LinkedIn. As I mentioned, you can connect with alumni from the schools you attend. And sometimes they even have, you can apply for jobs through LinkedIn. So this is a great place to already have an account so that if something comes up, you're able to reach out that way and it's all set up. Okay, so getting started. So it sounds like most of you really haven't started beyond maybe setting up an account, or you'll be setting up an account today. So these are just some things you're going to want to keep in mind as you get started. And so the first thing I wanted to point out before creating your account is, in case your first impulse is to use your New Canaan Public Schools email, don't do that, because you're going to want to use an email that you won't lose access to. So that would include also a college email address. These are usually emails that only work for a limited time. So to make sure that you always have access to your account, you want to use something like a Gmail, for example, that you would always have access to. And you can kind of play around with your public profile settings. So I don't know if everyone can necessarily see your email, but you probably want something that sounds professional, maybe some version of your name, not like an inside joke or something. But once you have your account, one major thing that is really easy to do, and not everyone does, but it's a great thing to keep in mind, is you can claim a custom LinkedIn URL. So if you go to your profile, which is just your picture, and then you hit edit public profile and URL, you can just edit your custom URL. So this is just on the right. It's really easy to click through and do that. And it lets you choose, for example, if your name's not already taken, it can just be your linked account at your name. So if you don't do that, it tends to be like your name and then 100 numbers after that. And it's not really memorable or something that you could easily come up with. But if you can have a custom URL, so whether it's your name or your name plus maybe 1 or 2 numbers, it's a lot easier to share that. So this is just something, as you're setting it up, you might want to think about, and then you just always have it that way. Okay, so to break down the introduction section, this is really going to be the thing you see at the top of the page, the first thing that anyone who's looking at your account will see. So first impressions, you want to have something that's filled in and appealing and captures you. So you're going to have your name, your profile photo, background photo, and then some of these might be optional as you're getting started in your career, but current position, education, location, industry, all of these things kind of give a summary of who you are. And then there's an actual summary section that is more like a cover letter, and you can kind of write up in a few paragraphs an introduction to you. So I was just going to show you an example, and my LinkedIn account is actually not that great. So I wanted to show a much better, more polished one. So this is Oprah's LinkedIn account. And so they have, as you can see in the corner, there's like a little icon. So these are like the LinkedIn influencers, right? So there are some celebrities who have companies, they have their own LinkedIn presence, but I think it's also a good example of just what the top of the page looks like. So as you can see, she's got the banner in the back. That's the larger photo. So that doesn't have to be of you, but it should be maybe representative of something you're interested in, something in your field of interest, just something that is eye-catching and appealing. And then obviously the smaller photo is of your face, so people can recognize you as a profile picture. And I like this one too because I think she kind of picked up the color in her shirt to the background. So if you really want to color code or something, you could do that too. But as you can see, it has her name, and then it has some of the titles that she that apply to her. So CEO, producer, publisher, actress, innovator, Probably don't start with innovator, so you're just getting started in your career, but you're going to have things that capture who you are, or are also, as you're in school, maybe sort of aspirational. So it might just be what you're majoring in, what kind of field of study you're pursuing in college, but also it can be, that you're hoping to pursue something in whatever field of work. It also has her location, her number of followers. On the right side, you can see her company. So this is also the side where your school would be listed, for example. So the profile photo is really a big part of the first impression, first thing that people see when they look up your account. So just some things to keep in mind. You want a picture that looks like you. I mean, it can be a slightly better version of you, but you don't really want something very filtered, something that's not really a good representation. If you walk into an interview, it should be like, oh, of course, that's the person. You want your face to take up most of the frame. You don't want group shots or something where it's not really even clear who you are, something like that. Don't pose with your dog. It's just really you, kind of like a school picture type thing. Choose the right expression, wear appropriate clothing, pretty basic stuff. And then just choose a background that isn't distracting, so the focus is on you. So summary statement is, I think, one of the most important things that you can include. Obviously your experience and everything is going to paint a picture of you, but this is your way to kind of control the narrative a bit and highlight things that are important to you. So you can talk about what motivates you, or what you've done or hope to do, what your skills are, or particularly, you want to think about what makes you unique. So you don't want to have a summary statement that you think anyone could have written and is really basic and really just covers stuff that a person who doesn't even know you could write about you. You want to kind of think about it and put some time into it. So I just have an example that I found of a student writing a summary statement, because I thought this would be helpful for before you're really in the workforce and you're just thinking about what to write. These are some good ways to maybe introduce a summary statement in the beginning. So this person just immediately talks about their schooling. They're currently enrolled as a senior in the College of Engineering and Computer Science. They talk about their major in information technology and their interest in web development. So these are all things that you can talk about while you're not yet employed, but you're going to school. So those are all things that are going to really cover what you pursue in the future. So they also talk about something personal in being an international student, and you can kind of extrapolate from things that are personal to you, like how that might make you a good candidate. And so they have been exposed to new cultures and diverse groups of people, and they're able to adapt. Like, those are all great qualities. And that's a nice way to introduce those qualities, because it's not in a vacuum. It's kind of showing you how they've cultivated them. And then, so you can see it's not a super long, it's 3 short paragraphs. So it's very readable. So no one's going to look at that wall of text and say, I don't know if I'm going to read that. So you're kind of drawn into reading it, but it also gives you a good sense of the person beyond just the resume. So I'm not going to go over these too much in depth. This is the rest of the spaces on the profile. Some of these are going to be relevant right away. You can put in any kind of, so obviously your internship, any other maybe part-time jobs or volunteering, any of that stuff you can already plug in. Education, so whatever school you're going to, you can start thinking about putting that into your profile. And skills, so skills are something you can start to think about, or you can hold off on that. So those are things you can get endorsements for from your professors or colleagues or different people who would be familiar with those. Recommendations, similarly, as you would get a recommendation normally, but this appears on LinkedIn. Courses, so you're not going to list every course you take, but if there's something really relevant to a field that you're going into, and maybe not everyone has had the opportunity to take a course like that, that's a great time to point it out. Obviously, awards you would want to show off regardless. Languages, as long as you actually do speak it, a great skill to have. So a lot of things really that you would have on a resume already. And then you can just think about how you would want to showcase that on your LinkedIn profile. And so publications and projects, I think I talked about a little bit, but this is really great because these are things that maybe you would talk about in a cover letter, but not be able to link to, not be able to show off the actual finished product. You can show those things off by linking to them, maybe a presentation, something like that. They can then, whoever's viewing your profile can then click on it. So that's a nice way to kind of add in more of like a multimedia aspect. Okay, so we're going to just summarize with these big 5 tips that you want to keep in mind. And again, like as you're getting started, not all of these things will be relevant, but I think the biggest thing is you want to have a profile established and keep adding to it. So first thing is really easy. It's just fill it in. So, I mean, if you think about, if you go on a website for a business, or you look at something that's kind of sparse and doesn't really give you a good idea of what's going on, you're probably going to be less interested in it and maybe look for something else. So anytime something is really filled in and really robust, I think it's a lot more compelling and interesting. So just some statistics on this. So profiles with photos, so that's, as I showed you, the background and then the photo in front, the profile photo, they're proven to get more traffic than those without photos, as you can imagine, because you don't want to see like a question mark or something where there's just a shadow or something and you don't know who that person is, or if they're a real person or if they're a bot. If you list 5 skills in your skills section, you're 31 times more likely to be discovered, because it's more concrete details. It's more of an idea of what this person is capable of. As I mentioned, the media content is a huge opportunity and it is becoming more and more common. So it's something you might want to consider. There's something you're proud of and you want to share. And then once your profile is completely filled out, and LinkedIn will tell you, it'll kind of show you the bar of progress on that. But once it's completely filled out, it's 27 times more likely to be found in recruiter searches. And you'll receive about 3 times more profile traffic. So it's just more appealing all around. Tip number 2 is to use descriptive keywords. So one of the things, and I'm not necessarily encouraging you to plagiarize, but when you look at someone's profile in the field that you're interested in, I think one of the great things that you can do is kind of pull keywords that they use and then use them for your own purposes. So if something applies to you and you're realizing that those keywords are generating kind of the top audience, they're at the top of the LinkedIn search results, then you might think about, okay, which keywords really apply to me? And so you can look at the profiles in general. It's a great idea to look at the profiles of people who kind of match career-wise what you're interested in and kind of see what they're doing and what you can take from that as a lesson. So keywords are super important. And just to give an example, to think about it in terms of if you had someone who listed their profession on their profile as teacher versus, for example, Connecticut State Certified Special Education and History Teacher for grades K through 6, you're going to have a much better idea of what the second person is able to offer if you're interested in them. It's just a lot more descriptive and helpful. So really you want to think about not just the quickest way to fill something out, but the best way so that it captures everything that it needs to capture. So tip number 3 is just make you shine through. So it's really easy, I think, to kind of just get in the habit of filling everything and plugging everything in a bit robotically. But you want to think about what can be a little more specific to you. And so we saw with the profile example, or with the summary example, we saw some personal details that then the person writing, they can kind of turn that into, why is that a strength? But they were very specific to them. So you want to think about maybe something specific to you that you can also include in your profile to make it personal. And there are a few ways you can do this. So you can think about what companies are looking for. So you can kind of tell them what you will provide to them. So it's a more mission-centric type of approach. You can do kind of the personality of, why did you get into this field? What do you love about it? So that one is a little more about your own feelings, but it's also great because if someone has a passion about something, it usually is translated to the person reading it feels that passion as well, and they're a lot more interested in that way. You can also, if you're just not really sure, you can think about those keywords because the specificity is going to be helpful, and it will generate a lot more search results because you've been specific enough. So tip 4 is to explore what's out there. And so this is just in many different ways. So as I was talking about, you want to think about other people who have already created profiles, who already have careers that are something you can look toward as inspiration or aspirational. So you want to kind of sit down and think about who you are, what you're interested in, where you want to land, and then maybe do some searches just around LinkedIn. Probably the easiest way to learn how it works, what's out there, is to just kind of play around. So one example of something to play around with is the idea of keyword searches versus job keyword searches. And they'll come up with different things. So the main keyword search for finance will give us people and groups. And the job keyword search for finance will bring up 207,000 plus jobs. So you probably are thinking in terms of, oh, I'll be looking for jobs, but it is also great to see what else is coming up on LinkedIn, and how you can either just learn from that in general, or how you can incorporate that into your own profile. Tip number 5 is probably the most important, because I feel like the impulse is to set up your LinkedIn account and then feel really, really satisfied that you've done it and you're done. But unfortunately, it's an ongoing process. So however long that takes, it could be, you could be able to let that sit for several months, but you could have a change in major, or you could work another internship, or you could have another research project that you're really proud of, and then suddenly you need to update again. The easiest thing is to really keep updating all along while you still have it fresh in your mind. And then that way you can just kind of plug things in really easily and say, okay, I know what I'm talking about, and I can just put that there, rather than, a year later or 6 months later think, oh, what was that? What was the name of that? So much harder. So it's nice to just always have something that's this dynamic document of what you're doing work-wise. And then it's just really easy to look back on it when you need a little help, a little something to jog your memory of, what have I been working on? What am I doing? What are my strengths? You can look at some of the things that you've done in your working life. It also never hurts to seek feedback or even endorsements. So your professors, your college's career center, upperclassmen, a mentor, all of these people are probably more than willing to help you, and they're useful for a lot of reasons, because they can really guide you career-wise. They can help you if maybe there's something about your profile that they're like, I don't think that's really working, or they can also give endorsements. So endorsements is this aspect of LinkedIn where if you're really talented at a certain skill, people will endorse you for it, and you can have there's like a little number of how many endorsements you've gotten on a skill, for example. And then when people click on your profile, they can see that, and they'll have a sense of, oh, they're very strong in, editing or whatever skill. And then you can also, so LinkedIn has not only the profile aspect, but also sort of like Facebook or something, there's like a feed element to it. So you can also think about what's going on in your field or in your life that you want to share with your followers. And that would be part of the feed rather than part of your static profile. So you might share a breaking news article or recent achievement. So you could really spend as much time or as little time on LinkedIn as you'd like. If you're posting articles, if you're engaging with other people on LinkedIn through these feeds, you could go on every day quite easily. But if you're just working on the profile, or just working on that as sort of a resume that people can see online, you might check in a little less frequently. So those are all things to keep in mind. You can ask in the chat right now if you'd like, or you can email me. My email is kcross@newcanaanlibrary.org, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Krause? Don't see any coming through. Okay. So basically this will be recorded, and I'll send everyone a link to our website. So if you want to look at this later as a resource, you can. That being said, thank you, Ms. Krause, for your time this morning.
That's great.
It was fantastic. I'm going to introduce, there's a question. It says, what should I, in linking, it says.
But you're anticipating.
Yeah, so you can, it's asking what degrees should you put? You can put your anticipated degree, you can put your college that you will be attending and the graduation date. That's usually what we'll see in LinkedIn. So the goal as for today is for everyone to complete their LinkedIn. You can work on it today since you have a lot of time. And then this week, what you're going to do is you are going to link in with your mentor or your teachers or me or Mrs. Carroll or Mr. Rothman, but it is very useful. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Krause, for your time today. So I'm going to have Mr. Rothman speak now.
Thank you, everyone. Good presentation. Thank you, Ms. Kraus. Thank you to Ben Carpenter. And of course, thank you, Ms. Bianco. All right, very quick announcement. As I'm sure you've heard, the school picnic has been postponed until tomorrow. The internship still starts tomorrow. If you are interested in attending the picnic, then you need to let your job site host, the person with whom you'll be working on your internship, know today that you will be ducking out for an hour or two. Otherwise, it is expected that you start tomorrow as planned. Okay, good. Everybody, good luck and have fun with your internship. And you'll be receiving a lot of emails and mail about graduation and end of year events. So again, as you should for your internship, make sure that you check your school email quite a bit.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rothman.
Okay.
Okay, so just real quick, what Mr. Rothman was saying, so if you would like to go to the school picnic, things have changed since when I first announced that the internships will start Wednesday. We kind of given it some thought because many internships, I know a lot of you are anxiously, would like to go, and we also want you to go to the picnic. So the option is up to you. If you want to go to the picnic, you can, but you need to let your host know today, and also copy me on that email and let me know so I know. I will send a note out to all the hosts letting them know that it is an option for our students, so they're not surprised about it. But please, it's really important that you contact your host if you plan on going to the picnic tomorrow. All right, if anyone has any questions about this, email me after the meeting and I'll help you with that. Other than that, we're really excited for all of you to go out on your internship. This is an exciting time. This is going to be a rewarding experience and an exciting experience. And we wish you the best of luck. And again, check your email every day. All right, everyone, take care and have a great day. Thank you.